terrorist capital in Khan Younis is now dismantled and an offensive in Rafah is looming. That's the word from Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who said that Hamas leadership abroad is looking for a replacement for its Gaza Strip leader, Yahya Sinwar. And ILTV's Steve Leibovich has more.
Defense Minister Yoav Gallant held an assessment with the head of the IDF Southern Command, Major General Yaron Finkelman. Later, Gallant described the breakdown in Hamas command and control of both its military and civilian operations. Gallant said Hamas's Khan Younis brigade has been defeated and does not function as a military entity in any way. Gallant also commented that with Khan Younis now controlled by the IDF, Hamas leadership abroad is looking to replace Yahya Sinwar, who has apparently lost the ability to command. Prime Minister Netanyahu declared that victory in Gaza was near, but was not complete.
We cannot leave a quarter of Hamas's terrorist battalions intact. No one would do that in the case of fighting ISIS. You wouldn't leave a quarter of ISIS intact in a defined territory. You wouldn't even think about that, and you didn't. America finished the job with its allies. We will finish the job here with our brave soldiers.
Netanyahu emphasized continuing efforts to free the hostages and fight the war with minimal civilian casualties.
I hope that we can achieve a deal to release more of our hostages. But deal or no deal, we have to finish the job to get total victory. I had recently a very good conversation with President Biden. I very much appreciate the support that he and the U.S. government have been giving us since the beginning of the war. Sometimes we have differences of opinion, but we've been able to overcome them. And I want to tell you that I agree with President Biden that we need to do everything in our power to get civilians out of harm's way as we complete the job.
In Khan Younis, some 200 terror suspects surrendered to troops at Nasser Hospital and dozens surrendered at Al Amal Hospital. Gallant said the mass surrenders indicate the loss of Hamas's fighting spirit. They understood, said Gallant, their options were to surrender or die. There was no third option. IDF Special Forces located vehicles used by Hamas terrorists who participated in the October 7th rampage, as well as Israeli-owned cars stolen during the massacre. Troops have also seized firearms, explosive devices, and other military equipment belonging to terror operatives. Also at Nasser Hospital, IDF troops found closed boxes of medications bearing the names of Israeli hostages.
מצאנו כאן בבית המרקחת תרופות שככל הנראה היו אמורות להגיע לחטופים, ממש עם מיתוג ושם החטוף. ניתן לראות פה תמונות, את התמונות חטפו, חלק מהכיתובים עוד נשארו. תמר מצגר, עד הסגי, ממש ניתן לראות עם התמונה. יפה אדר. ועוד תרופות של חטופים שלא שוחררו עדיין.
The medications were reportedly delivered to Gaza in a private initiative coordinated by the families of some of the hostages. The medications made it to the Gaza hospital, but did not reach their loved ones.
The Israeli cabinet has made clear that it is strongly opposed to reported efforts in Washington to formulate an overall plan for the Middle East in the post-war period that includes a pathway for a Palestinian state. Back to ILTV's Steve Leibovich.
The cabinet has unanimously passed a declarative statement opposing reported U.S.-led international efforts to advance a two-state solution and unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. This after reports over the weekend that the U.S. was planning to advance a post-Gaza war plan for the Middle East that includes a pathway to Palestinian statehood and normalization of ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia.
Israel utterly rejects international diktats regarding a permanent settlement with the Palestinians. A settlement, if it is to be reached, will come about solely through direct negotiations between the parties without preconditions. Israel will continue to oppose unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. Such a recognition in the wake of the October 7th massacre would be a massive and unprecedented reward to terrorism and would prevent any future peace agreement. This passed unanimously in the government today. It will pass tomorrow in the Knesset, I think with an overwhelming majority.
Netanyahu said that no one can impose a Palestinian state on Israel and called a Palestinian state in post-war a prize to Hamas for attacking Israel on October 7th.
But one thing Israel cannot agree to is an international diktat that would seek to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state, basically force a Palestinian state on Israel after the horror of October 7th. And you should know that the people of Israel are really united in this.
Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador Jack Lew sought to dispel talk that the U.S. plans to recognize a Palestinian state unilaterally. Lew said that the U.S. envisions an over-the-horizon process that includes a vision for a demilitarized Palestinian state, far less than what some reports have indicated is being discussed at the White House.
And now the United Nations top court is convening today, opening a week of hearings on Israel and the Palestinians. And so joining us now to elaborate is journalist and JNS Jerusalem Bureau Chief Alex Trayman. Alex, so much to cover today. Let's start with the International Court of Justice. What is this about?
Thanks so much, Amit. Following the case brought by South Africa to try Israel on the bogus charges of genocide, the General Assembly of the United Nations has now asked the International Court of Justice to provide an advisory opinion, which is actually completely non-binding, but they are now starting to ask questions not only about genocide, but whether they consider Israel to be an apartheid, an occupation, an ethnic cleansing. If you name it, you can just put any accusation against Israel you want, and the International Court of Justice is going to rule whether or not Israel's done it.
And what's your opinion on that?
Well, the United Nations is a body that sanctions Israel, or more not than any country in the United Nations, but more than all countries in the United Nations combined. So it has clearly demonstrated itself to be a completely anti-Israel and biased body. And just the fact that the International Court of Justice would even consider hearing a trial on the case of whether or not Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip, I think really demonstrates how biased this body is. And it's unfortunate that Israel is even being forced to participate. They're not participating in the current hearings, but they did participate in the genocide trial.
Alex, more than 50 states, no less, are set to address the judges on this issue. I mean, what do all these countries have to do with this? I mean, everyone wants their say when it comes to Israel this time.
Well, the United Nations has become the main punching bag, the place where Israel can be hit. And unfortunately, the United Nations for years has been riling up its member nations, many of whom are members of the Arab League. And so this isn't uncommon, unfortunately, for the United Nations. And they all are just going to try to put as much diplomatic pressure on Israel as possible. And the fear here is that if the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, come down with rulings against Israel, that those rulings could then be used as the basis for financial sanctions against the Jewish state in the future.
Okay, now back to the issue of Palestinian statehood. The cabinet has passed a strong statement against a reported U.S. plan for a post-Gaza war in the Middle East. The plan has yet to be presented publicly and would reportedly be released only after a ceasefire agreement or a pause in fighting is reached in Gaza. What details do we have about the plan?
Well, the big fear is that the Biden administration is considering ways to recognize a Palestinian state unilaterally, meaning even if Israelis and Palestinians don't agree to go into negotiations toward the creation of a Palestinian state, that the United States and others, including the UK, and David Cameron said as much a few weeks ago, that they would all consider unilaterally recognizing Palestinian statehood. Last night, United States Ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, said that the United States has not said that as of yet and are looking at rather a path toward a Palestinian state on the horizon. They wouldn't necessarily unilaterally approve Palestinian statehood. But if they did, this would essentially be the end of the Oslo process, the end of the Land for Peace process, where the United States and others would say, we don't care if the Palestinians can deliver peace. We still want Israel to divide its land.
Alex, the U.S. plan also reportedly includes normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which Prime Minister Netanyahu has long touted, even much before the war, as the big prize towards complete Israeli acceptance in this region. Is that not worth the price?
Well, the Abraham Accords, Israel's normalization with the Emirates and with Bahrain, demonstrated that the Palestinian issue is not part of the normalization process with other states in the Middle East. Israel was on the path toward normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia before this war, and Palestinian statehood had nothing to do with it. The United States is now trying to essentially bribe Israel into Palestinian statehood by linking it up to Saudi normalization. But I don't think that Israel would be prepared to go into a normalization agreement if that meant that it would have to tear its country in half and gift a state to the Palestinians after they committed the worst massacre in Israel's history on October 7th.
Yes, indeed, that's on point. Alex Trayman, we missed you a lot here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh, speaking at the Munich Security Conference, underscored the need for Palestinian unity, signaling a willingness to engage with Hamas if key conditions are fulfilled. The Palestinian Authority is actively seeking unity with Hamas, with talks potentially scheduled in Moscow on February 26, according to PA Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference, Shtayyeh emphasized the importance of Palestinian unity and expressed readiness to engage with Hamas if certain prerequisites are met. Shtayyeh highlighted the need for Hamas to accept the political platform of the PLO and to commit to popular resistance. He called for a focus on achieving unity and moving past past conflicts, stating, "One should not continue focusing on October 7." Efforts to reconcile with Hamas come amidst a broader reform agenda announced by the PA in January, which includes governance and security sector reforms. Shtayyeh emphasized that these reforms are part of a broader push for Palestinian rights and an end to the so-called Israeli occupation. However, challenges remain, including the question of Hamas' role within the PLO and the broader Palestinian political landscape. The PA is calling for international support for Palestinian statehood based on the 1967 borders as a step towards resolving the conflict with Israel. With tensions high and a lack of negotiating partner in Israel, the PA, brokered by Russia, is looking to the international community, including the United States, Europe, and Arab countries, for support in achieving Palestinian independence. So the Palestinian Authority is actively seeking unity with Hamas, and with us to analyze is founder and director of the Palestinian Media Watch, Itamar Marcus. Itamar, Hamas killed PA officials and took over Gaza by force in 2007, killing PA officials. Aren't they still enemies?
Fatah and Hamas definitely are still enemies. They compete with each other for power. They each want to rule the entire Palestinian population. What we have now is a very unique situation where Hamas is about to be destroyed in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority has no support of the Palestinian population. What you have is 90% of the population supporting Hamas, but they don't have a framework to rule. And you've got Fatah that has international support, but they don't have the people behind them. So what we're having here is a marriage of convenience between Fatah and Hamas. Fatah will be the face of this government, which will bring them international support and international funding. but Hamas will be the power behind it, because Hamas, that has the support of the people, they're the ones that have to give their stamp of approval. So like I say, it's a marriage of convenience. It's not a marriage of love.
Do you want to say that at this point, Hamas still has the support of the people in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority?
They certainly have the support in the Palestinian Authority. They've had more support in Judea and Samaria than they had in Gaza already from the month and a half, 2 months, where their support was 20% higher amongst West Bank Arabs as opposed to Gaza. And that's clear because the people in Gaza have suffered tremendously. I haven't seen a poll since the real terrible destruction of the last month in Gaza. It could be that their support in Gaza has gone lower. However, the fundamental belief in Hamas ideology, that it's a war for Allah, that Jews have to be destroyed, Jews have to be killed, that people are going to believe in, even if Hamas doesn't have any frameworks and structures, and even if Hamas brought suffering on them. So whatever Fatah is going to want to do, in order to get the support of the people, they are going to have to bring Hamas into it.
What do you think will be the Palestinian Authority objectives in the post-Gaza war period? Still a long time to go, but what do you think that will be?
The Palestinian Authority is trying to use this to jumpstart international recognition for a Palestinian state. The number one ideology of the Palestinian Authority is victimhood. And as far as the Palestinian Authority is concerned, October 7th is ancient history, and everything since October 8th onward is current history. And since from October 8th onward, Palestinians have been suffering, and whatever number, 30,000, whether it's complete lie or partial truth, doesn't matter. That's the number they're using. We've had 30,000 people killed. We deserve a state. So that's their message to the international community now. And for all sorts of interesting reasons, a lot of the different countries are supporting them. The United States is supporting it because Biden has an election coming up and he's been losing his base. He needs the Arab base and he needs a democratic base completely in order to run this. The irony here is that the international community wants to put in a Fatah, Palestinian Authority government, which is going to be only a mask. Literally, it's going to be a facade, because right behind them, you've got Hamas with all the power, from the people. So it's shocking and it's tragic that the international community doesn't see what they're building here, because should they give recognition to this kind of an entity, and should they continue funding the Palestinian Authority, and should there be any kind of democracy in the Palestinian Authority, within a very short time, Hamas is going to be de facto ruling what's going on there with Western money.
Yes, and we're also seeing the American call for a two-state solution. The U.S. is also calling for reform of the Palestinian Authority and its remaking in the post-war period. Is the PA capable of ending its incitement against Israel, and can it, in your opinion, become maybe a constructive force moving forward?
Well, first of all, what's ironic is that when you listen to what the Americans and the Europeans, when they talk about the Palestinian Authority reforming, everything they're talking about is an administration, it's structure. They want to have more transparency. No one's talking about essence. No one's even talking about the incitement. No one's talking about the ideology. No one's talking about what they believe in. The Palestinian Authority has brainwashed its people for so many years that this is a religious war for Allah, that the Jews are the enemy of Allah, the Jews are the enemy of humanity. That doesn't disappear just because the Palestinian Authority stopped saying it. The people believe this. It's why they supported October 7th. It's why they celebrated the massacre of Jews. And the chance of this kind of an entity all of a sudden reversing directions and telling its people, Jews are okay. We can live beside the Jews. They're not the enemy of Allah. They're not monkeys and pigs. They're not Satan. How are they going to do that? So the only way there could be a Palestinian government that can lead the people to any kind of a peaceful future with the Israelis, it has to have none of the current actors, zero. It has to be the Palestinian Authority, just like Hamas, has to be completely erased. Something completely new, appointed essentially by Western governments, have to take over everything, including education, culture. And then there's a chance that maybe in 10 years or another generation, we'll have a population that can make peace with us.
Yes, Itamar, thank you so much for joining us today, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's recent comparison of Israel's military actions in Gaza to the Holocaust has sparked a heated international debate, drawing strong condemnation from Israeli officials. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has sparked controversy by comparing Israel's military actions in Gaza to the Holocaust, calling it genocide against Palestinian civilians. Lula made these comments while attending an African Union summit in Addis Ababa, and he went on to say that the only historical equivalent to this situation was when Hitler decided to kill the Jews. Israel has strongly condemned Lula's remarks. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described the comments as shameful and accused Lula of trivializing the Holocaust and attempting to harm the Jewish people and Israel's right to defend itself. Lula's comments have also drawn criticism from within Israel. Foreign Minister Israel Katz called them shameful and grave, while Dani Dayan, chairman of Yad Vashem, said they were an outrageous combination of hatred and ignorance and amounted to blatant anti-Semitism. Moreover, the Brazilian ambassador to Israel has been summoned for a reprimand by Foreign Minister Israel Katz at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem this morning, in response to Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's comments. Foreign Minister Israel Katz made it clear to the ambassador that statements like these are totally unacceptable, that Hamas killed over 1,400 people on October 7 simply because they were Jews and Israelis. And always remember that. And now, scare in the air as hostile elements attempted to seize control of an El Al airplane's communication network mid-flight from Phuket to Ben Gurion Airport, prompting concerns of a potential hijacking. And ILTV's William Sharon has the story.
Hostile elements attempted to take control of the communication network of an El Al plane flying from Phuket to Ben Gurion Airport Saturday night. Despite the attempt, the plane reached its destination safely. The incident occurred over an area where Iran-backed Houthis are active. However, sources in Somalia suggest the group in the de facto state of Somaliland, which recently signed an agreement with Ethiopia, is responsible for the attempted attack. During the incident, the crew received instructions different from their set route. Raising concerns of potential harm to the plane or a kidnapping attempt, the crew, however, disobeyed the instructions and swiftly switched to alternative communication methods. The official authorities have issued instructions to all pilots that as soon as this happens, with a certain frequency, they should not listen to the instructions and switch to another communication method. El Al emphasized in a statement that the disturbances are not aimed at El Al planes and that this is not a security incident. The disruption did not affect the normal course of the flight thanks to the professionalism of the pilots, who used alternative means of communication and allowed the flight to continue on its planned route.
In a historic moment at the World Aquatics Championships in Qatar, Israel's Anastasia Gorbenko secured a silver medal in the women's 400-meter individual medley, setting a new Israeli record. Israel's Anastasia Gorbenko achieved a historic milestone at the World Aquatics Championships in Qatar, securing a silver medal in a women's 400-meter individual medley. Gorbenko's time of 4 minutes 37 seconds set a new Israeli record and marked the country's first ever medal at the championships in swimming. Despite leading for much of the race, Gorbenko finished just 24 hundredths of a second behind Freya Colbert of Britain, who claimed the gold. The victory was bittersweet for Gorbenko as she faced boos and jeers from the Qatari crowd during her post-race interview and at the medal ceremony. The Israeli champion remained resolute, expressing pride in representing her country. At just 20 years old, Gorbenko has already made history as the first Israeli to win a medal at the World Aquatic Championships in swimming. Her achievement also includes reaching 4 finals in the competition, another first for an Israeli athlete. She's a true champion. And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with lows of around 6 degrees Celsius or 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we will see skies clear up alongside steady top temperatures, seeing highs of about 14 degrees Celsius or 57 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channel, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and of course, do not forget to check out our new and improved website, ILTV.tv, with all of the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Amit Harari. Stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.